Hi and welcome everyone. Here with me, Peter Music, UI5's chief architect, who will also be the presenter today and present all kinds of things, a whole group of things around the UI5 tooling extensions, how to use third-party NPM packages, how to work offline, and so on. So a lot of extensions that he likes and he would like to recommend to you and to show to you. This was actually the content of a UI5 Con session, which did not quite have enough time. So now we have a bit more time. We have only him as presenter, and we hope that the time will be sufficient this time. Without further ado, I would say now it's time to go over to Peter.
Yeah, hello everybody, also from my side. So let's keep fingers crossed that this time I have enough time to show you the whole content of the presentation. It's about the boost of your development experience with the UI5 tooling extensions. Yeah, the UI5 tooling alone is already a cool improvement of the development experience for everyone. But with a little bit of extensions around, you can even make that more boosting. Therefore, I wanted to just emphasize once more, there is nothing more important than an efficient development environment. So for me, this is key. If I have really the power then to do everything quickly, this is the thing which I like most, and without a lot of things to tweak around. So all in all, the UI5 tooling is it's available and it's extensible. And in the past, with Volker, I started this UI5 Ecosystem Showcase project, which should be a foundation to explain to everyone how you can write your own tooling extension, being it tasks or being it middlewares. And it started in 2018, and since then it has grown tremendously. And we have a lot of things in, and there is now in the meantime even more in than just the UI5 tooling extension. Also, for example, the CDS plugin for the CAP server. This has been available there as an open source tool, which can be used to integrate the UI5 tooling into the CAP development. But we won't go in that detail today. So what's in the showcase? So let's give a little bit an overview on that. Overflow. That could be also something, because if you see now what's in, then maybe it's really an overflow. There is really a lot of tasks and middlewares in the meantime. So thanks to everyone who contributed, who came up with ideas in the past to bring up some nice extension. We integrate that here in this GitHub repository and made it available here to everyone as an NPM package so that you can consume that as a dependency. And as I said, there is also other stuff in the meantime in. So it's not only the tooling extensions, there is even more around which boosts your development experience. And I have a lot of favorites here inside there, but I forgot one thing. There is even more around that, There, besides these tooling extensions being developed in the UI5 ecosystem, you don't need to do that here. You can also have your own repositories and making them available as NPM package. But then, please go forward and register and your tooling extension, the best of UI5 project there. You can also make this available for others, looking up for nice tooling extensions here inside. And you can use this then to find other stuff which you may need and which you don't know whether it's there. So now my favorites, this is the one I highlight here, and I want to quickly go over them. So besides the UI5 tooling extensions, one of my favorite is EasyUI5. This is the Yeoman generator, which helps you to kickstart your development. And here we have generators inside for applications, libraries, TypeScript applications, TypeScript libraries. There's also the just recently Nico Schönteich released a new version of the project generator, which is then the skeleton-based approach to build up your environment for building a bigger application project in the cloud and the BTP environment. And so also here, take a look into that, and we see that also later on in action when I quickly go over that. Besides that, there is the live reload feature. I like a lot. This was even the first one we made, the first tooling extension to easily, in case of changes, restart the application and show the change. There is the simple proxy to easily proxy data sources. This was the second one we developed at that point in time, And then in the in between, other ideas came up, like the Surf framework. This one allows you to consume the UI5 runtime assets in a build format. So normally, if you use the UI5 tooling and you consume or you develop with that, you only get the assets as development dependencies, but there are no preloads inside, and the Surf framework bridges this gap as it builds them and make also the preloads available for your local development. You can also use that to run offline. Also that we see later on. Surf static, bring in static content from your local project for testing purposes maybe. The UI5 middleware UI5 to connect applications or reuse components with another application, something which is not working out of the box, because libraries you can connect with applications, but reuse components you can't. Then we have the tooling transpile. This is needed in case of you use TypeScript, for example, or even if you want to use modern JavaScript, you can use that with Babel in the back to transpile your code backwards into a compatible ES format. And then tooling modules. This is a really nice thing. So I like that really the most, because here you can easily then make use of third-party packages coming from NPM in the same way like you do that for node development scenarios. And or like other frameworks do as well. UI5 task zipper is the last thing. I just quickly show that because this is complete. So if you deploy things, then the UI5 task zipper can be used to zip then the build content, and then this zip can be used to deploy the application. But now let's take a look in how all of that is playing together. So in order to get started with the project, so the first thing we should do is the ECUI5 generator. So then I want to create an application. So by the way, if you don't start it with the app, then you get already the list of available templates from ECUI5. And as these are community templates, which are there behind the scenes, they are coming from the UI5 community GitHub organization. And all repositories which are in there, which start with generator UI5, they will be listed automatically here inside. And so it's really an extensible generator. And even if you would like to do contributions, you can add them to the UI5 community, and then it's immediately available for everyone for the development. So let's use the app generator. So it's a normal JavaScript application. And then it asks me for some questions. So first it checks whether the generators are up to date. Because in case of someone changes, then the template's now behind the scenes. If I make a fix, then I can immediately roll that out by just the next time when you run the generator that this is fetching the change, and then it makes it available for you. So let's create a project, call it UI5ers Live App. It's OpenUI5 we want to use, the latest version, my name. I want to create a new directory, and I want to have no local Git repository. I had this project already created. I want to speed up a little bit. Therefore, I have it here. VDIO is running as a follow-up generator to enable now this project for VDI5 testing. And this has been added as a kind of a sub-generator behind the scenes. So now what you get, let's go to the Visual Studio Code, is that so I collapse that, I get now this UI5ers Live app. This is a very simple UI5 application. And it's already completely pre-configured. It comes with testing, it comes with a build, it comes with linting, it comes with an environment to start and to test the whole thing. And for sure, also the VDI5 testing is being integrated already out of the box. So if I start now the application, and then we can also immediately see how one of the tooling extension is working, the live reload extension, because I can immediately now make changes. So this is the sample application we just created now. And let's put the editor aside. So I change, for example, here on this page, let's go to the main view. And instead of having the formatter here for the text, pulling the data from this button text property, I can now also put something else inside, like XXX. And you see, this is the live reload feature. It's watching while developing all your source files in your project. And then in case of changes, it's immediately reflecting them. So let's change it back. And how is this working? So basically, it's working because of, in the dev dependencies, we have the UI5 middleware live reload as a dependency available, as a tooling extension dependency available. And then in the UI5 YAML, we have the UI5 middleware live reload configured here. And here, one thing as a remark, please make sure to have it always as the last middleware, because this ensures that if you use after middleware always to register the things, that this runs first. And that's something you have to know. That's because of how the stacking works when the UI5 tooling is registering the middlewares. But so I suggest using after middleware and then having the compression and putting it and keeping it at the end is the right thing. Then you ensure that it runs first and the live reload is also working properly, because some of the people mentioned back that this was not working. So this was my first tooling extension I really like, and this is available by default in all the projects. So next to the application project, I also created a library project using EasyUI5. So it's Yo EasyUI5 library, and then I used UI5ers live.lib as a name and did the same steps. And at the end, what came out of that is this project I have here. I can say open integrated terminal, and here at the end, when you have this library project being installed or created, then you can also run it directly here in this project we start. Because what I want to show to you now is how you connect a library with an application. This is also something which very often the people just don't know, and it's a very, very easy thing. So here we have this example control built in, and here also, yeah, for sure, if I do changes inside the example control, let's go to the renderer, and we make some change in the middle. I put just some Y's in between, they are reflected here. So as you see also, this thing behaves exactly the same like the application.
One thing to mention for the libraries, when you say you run a library, then this means a test page that is also in the project.
Exactly. Yeah, that's true. The test page is in the test folder, this example HTML, and this is generated out of the box. It's using an example.js. And here in the example.js, the code is running, which places the control just simply on the test page. There are also QUnit tests available for that by default, which showcase how you can do testing for that. So, but now, let's connect the library with the application. So I go to my application, and the thing I do is I connect it by using an npm install command. And there I use the name of the library. So it's the npm package name here. It's the UI5ers live.lib. So just to be sure, we take that from here. And then I need to, if I do it locally and I have not made it available on the npm registry, I can connect it also with a local file URL. So like I know it's one level up, and then I have the folder UI5ers lib, which is next to the application. Yeah, the only thing I did wrong here in this case now, no, I did not wrong. It should not be a dev dependency, that's right. It should be really only a dependency, because it is really a dependency of the project. And then this dependency appears here in the package.json. And that was all to make use of the library. So I can start now my application. And when you now check this listing, you see in the resources, there is the UI5ers lib available, and you can drill down and can already see the modules from this library is in there. So that was all to make the library part of that. But now let's make use of this control. And therefore we go into the main view. So the one we have when we open this application, I put it a bit to the right and make it a little bit smaller. So what I want to do now is, let's change it a little bit smaller. I hope it's still okay. I remove now the illustrated message thing here because it doesn't allow me to have anything else like the buttons. So I just want to have the button here inside. And then I save that. And now let's integrate next to the say hello button also this example control. So in the namespace, I need to now use the UI5ers live.lib. Let's call it like that. It's a bit lengthy, but it's okay. UI5ers live.lib. This is the namespace of my library. And now I can use this XML namespace to address the control. So example was the name of the control. And I know that the control has a text, and in the text I say XXX. So saving that and see, here it's appearing. It has also this YYY inside. And now what is also interesting, because we have the application started, but I have the library also locally available next to me. I can also correct now the library and work in there and make changes. So if I change now the YYY, you see it's updating here immediately, because the live reload knows about the dependencies of the project, and then it updates also this application and the control used in the application with that. So that's also, which is quite nice, because now you can work in the library in parallel while developing the app and testing it directly in there. So that was one thing which I wanted to show to you. Interesting is also maybe one thing which is good to know is, if you want to build the application, also make sure that the library is being included. There is a command, or not a command, there's a configuration in the UI5 YAML, which allows you to ensure that the library is being included as a dependency and being built when the build is running. So now if I run the build in my application, it will make sure that also this library is detected. You see it, requested dependencies, UI5ers live lib. Now the whole project, including the dependencies, is being built for the library. This is necessary because for the theme build of the UI5ers live lib, it needs to have also the relevant dependencies being built for that. And it also, in the dist folder later on, copies the library into the resources folder that it's being included in this applications build. So now we see that in the dist folder, we have a resources folder, and the UI5ers live lib is fully built, integrated into the application. This makes sense if you have, let's say, one library which is used exclusive for that application, that you can also integrate and deploy it with your application. In case of you consume UI5 from the CDN, please make sure that here in the resource roots, you now register the namespace UI5ers live.lib should now point to /resources/UI5ers live./lib to ensure that the UI5ers live lib, this library, is not resolved relative to the bootstrap from CDN, that it's loaded relative to the application. So I can also use now the npm start command. There is one inside the application which tests the build output. So start dist CDN, so we can do that. And then we can test how the application would run with a build output.
One small thing in the UI5 YAML, this library, because it's a local one, has to be configured a bit different than the normal UI5 libraries. This is something to remember.
So, and now if you see here, so the UI5ers live lib is loaded relative to my application. It's loading the single files, because obviously I also forgot to put in a manifest JSON the dependency to this UI5ers live lib, and then if I would have done that, it would have loaded also the preload for that library in this case. But you see, this is how the things are playing together, and that's also really an important part to understand here. So now we saw mainly basics on how things are being connected. Now let's go a little bit more to the other tooling extensions. So let's see one important extension if you want to connect to backend services. So in this case, if you want to connect to backend services, a nice thing to use is the simple proxy. npmi UI5 middleware simple proxy. And this one I install as a dev dependency here. The library we don't need. So, and now if I have that installed in the package JSON, so I give you a nice tip. If you want to get some details about documentation, just hover over the dependency, you get a link, and this link brings you to the README of this middleware. And there you can see all the details about the possible parameters which are available. And you get also at some place the default configuration for that. So let me copy this configuration, and then we do one thing. We use the version JSON information from the CDN to display a list of available versions for UI5. So therefore, I go in the UI5 YAML, and here I add now the UI5 middleware simple proxy. I use the Open UI5 SDK, and this gets the base URI SDK openui5.org. So from here, I want to proxy the stuff through this OpenUI5 SDK. Obviously, this can be also data service or whatever you have in mind. So now, to consume that easily in the manifest JSON of my application, I can add a model. So not yet a default model. So I use the JSON model here inside, and here I query the version JSON from OpenUI5 SDK. Then as the next step, in order to consume that, I just need now to add in my XML view a list which displays these versions. So let's use this list here. And it's not really well indented. Anyhow, so here with the version list, we bind against the default model. And then in the standard list item, we display the version and the support of the version. So npm, let's see how it looks like. I just started. So the version JSON looks like that. Smaller, SDK openui5.org, version JSON. So here, this is the version information from the CDN. And this is the one we want to now display in the list. And here it is already. Here I have now the version, I have the maintenance information and so on. So it's here. So it was that easy to consume then this service and proxy that through the simple proxy. So there is not much effort. The simple proxy has a lot of additional features in as well. So you can also have user name, password, you can add headers, query parameters to that. You can also say to exclude dedicated patterns in the path, which can maybe come from a local thing. It can proxy potentially also WebSockets, so that's an experimental feature. But there is a lot of things inside or removing e-tag, which you can take a look into. And most of the things came up through requests to that, and there were always dedicated need on that. So now, after having the proxy, I want to show you one more thing. If you want to work offline or you want to test the UI5 runtime with, let's say, the more built resources from the framework, you can either use the CDN. This is one option to do so. But what we see here, we load a lot of single resources, and many of you had the issue maybe already with that. It's obviously we have already 304s not modified, that we don't run into maybe too much severe performance problems. But still, if you disable cache, this can be really heavyweight. Therefore, there is a tooling extension called the UI5 middleware serve framework. And this was also a result because many of you came to me and asked also about a question. We should use install. How can we also test, let's say, with the build resources besides the CDN? I want to have it offline and stuff like that. So then we brainstormed a little bit, and then the serve framework middleware has been created out of that requirement. So if I now check, so this is mainly configuration free, but I need to just go there to load or to look up the configuration quickly, then I can spare a bit of time. So I copy the way how it's being configured. You just drop it. You don't need to configure anything. All the information it needs is in here, like the version of OpenUI5, the framework and the version, and that's it. So if I now start the application, the first time you would use that and you haven't built OpenUI5, it will take a while because it now completely builds all libraries of OpenUI5 or even SAP UI5, and then it starts the application. So here now, when we look into that, we see it's much less requests now because we have the preloads for the individual libraries. And this is now a nice thing that you really can test with a little bit less requests here and a little bit more like a CDN approach, and you can also test a little bit more from a performance perspective how it would behave with a more real backend. And the other good thing is it works offline that way. You have a full build UI5 version offline now behind the scenes with that, and not more to do than adding this middleware to your project, and then it's available. So next one. So what I also very often need for testing is to include maybe some static resources. So for sure, I can also add them into the web app, but then it comes also into the delivery of the project. And maybe in some cases, I don't want to do that. And therefore, there is a tooling extension, the middleware serve static. So this serve static middleware allows you to include resources from a local path. So let's say we have here a doc folder, and in the doc folder we have my docs.md file in there. And here I just have a hello world text inside, and I want to use that to display that in my application. So first, now after installing this dependency, I'm going to the serve static to just copy the configuration from there. So let's go there. And here we need a little bit more because we need to point to the local path. And in the UI5 YAML, I drop that now here inside. And now let's say what we want to do is we want to serve static mount path docs. And this docs should come from ./docs. It's not in the web app, so it's somewhere aside. And in this case now, I would be able, if I have done that I can pull this doc.md on the client side. That does not exist. Did I do it wrong? It's doc, it's not called docs. Oh, no, let's rename it here. So and now if I go to docs, doc.md, here it's available, you see? So that's the serve static, which brings you in the stuff here. Now I want to create a small control, which is able to show this markdown. And there is a nice, let's say, third-party package I want to use. This is this marked JS. So I think it was already used in some projects, and I just stumbled across that while I prepared my walkthrough here for that. So in order to consume the third-party package, the classic way was like that: npm install. We have the marked here inside. So it should be added as a normal dependency to your project. And then in, what we did is in the past, so we used shimming. And still it's at the moment the default way from the tooling, the default functionality of the tooling. But and I come to that in the community, we have several options now to do that different. So this was the way how you include a third-party package. So you have this marked as a configuration, it's a project shim. And this was just copied from the documentation, which is here behind the scenes, and adopted to provide marked here via this resources marked. So now if I start that, we can also see that quickly how that looks like. So I can also drill that. So the biggest benefit is that you can also now drill down and see that the marked min has been available here. So I have the third party now available here and can make use of that. So let's just take that quickly to make use of that to create a control to show this markdown in the UI. So I'm creating now a new file, control/mdviewer.js. And I was a bit quicker now to implement that. So it's a control, and I pull also as a dependency this marked min.js. Then I have here this global available. So ESLint is bothering me because it doesn't know that from here, the global is coming in. If you want to get rid of that, you can put, let's say, a marker here that this is available as a global for the moment. And now I can use this marked min to put it into my XML view and to display this content. So it's now we need to have a local namespace. Let's call it control. And we have the UI5ers live app.control. This is the namespace. And now I can say control MD viewer. And this MV viewer, it has a property. The property is text. And here in the text, I can also write it now manually, hello XXX, and save it. So while doing that and opening that now in the page, it should come up. Yeah, here on top it is, but it doesn't display the text. Did I forget one thing? And here it's called content, not text. So, and now, yeah, the list we can disable for the time being. I think we don't need that right now. It's just hopping around. So, and now we see here the hello XXX, it's being loaded. It's using and formatting that also depending on the thing is inside. But I want to now consume the stuff from the static serve. So I'm going to my controller in the main view and I'm adding an onInit function here. The onInit function now uses fetch to consume the dockmd, and I didn't use await here on top, async function here on top, because there was also something I would like to mention. It was documented by the UI5 team that on predefined hooks of controllers or components or so, don't use async here, because we may also in future add a return value here. And therefore, this is potentially a source of an issue in the future. I just want to make it clear. You can, if you want, but it's on your own risk, let's say. And it's explained also here behind that link. I also make the whole thing later available as a repository so that you can take a look into this whole project. So, but doing that now, saving. Did it start already? Did I do the same? So let me just add one thing. Hello world, it didn't update because what did I do wrong? I like that live coding. UI5ers live app, main controller. The fetch takes place, docs, dockmd, and is there an error coming up? Console, uncaught, read properties of undefined, set content, because most probably the ID is missing since I didn't copy the original code. Thank you. ID, MD viewer, and now hello world is being displayed. Yeah, it's in. So if I now change here and add more things, bold text also, then this is also being reflected here. Good. So now, if you want to consume the whole thing a little bit more modern, instead of having this this approach, what we have seen here with the shims and a configuration-free approach, let's disable that for the time being. The easiest way to consume third-party packages is to use the UI5 tooling modules. And this is an evolution over the last couple of years where we played around how easy it is to consume third-party package, how to make them available as UI5 modules. And in this case, it enables you now to just write a dependency to that. So we keep it as it is here, the dependency, because this path simulated the way how to access it typically, and how other frameworks are doing the same thing. So by having now the tooling modules available, I can just enable that as a middleware in my project and as a build task. So I'm just copying the whole thing here. No custom task, we don't need. I'll just use this one here, custom middleware. First, like this. And UI5 YAML. Now we go on top, put it on top on the stack. And now I can immediately, if I start the application, consume marked also as a package directly from NPM. Let me just quickly see if we still have the other one. So 1 second. Network, I just want to show you the mark. So this was the former code being loaded. And now if I do it now with the UI5 tooling modules and open a new tab, you see it comes now with a SAP UI define preamble. Yeah, so it is now a UI5 AMD-like module. And this has two benefits now. You can just require that like we did before, but you now also get the export of this package as a parameter. You don't need to use the globals anymore, and you don't pollute the globals anymore. So in this case, now to make the application running, because it will now fail if I do it with the normal open, so this will not come up because it says there is an issue inside. It doesn't find this marked anymore. And therefore you can now go to the control and use here the local import. So that's the really the best thing of that, because this becomes now your UI5 dependency, and you get this export of this module imported in a regular way, like you know it from UI5. And you see it continues to work. So, and the UI5 tooling modules has also now a cool thing with that. You can also use that for building the project. So there is, besides the tooling modules middleware, there is also the task. Yeah, so let's go quickly also to this, to the page, GitHub. It's always this on top. Let's copy the task configuration. And if I drop that task in here, we don't need the builder because it's up there. We can now also use it to build a project. If I now run the build, let's remove the library dependency because this one just takes additional time, npm run build. Then what happens now is that this dependency is also copied into the project, into the resources namespace, and as a UI5 AMD-like module. So it's prepared that you can consume that. There is another important feature I would like to mention. And this feature allows you then to consume or to make sure that this third-party package is becoming a private exclusive package of your project, of your application. So let's do this one here. And now I run the build and see in a second what happens. So add to namespace means this third-party package will now be added to the namespace of your application. And you see, instead of the resources, there is now a third-party folder which contains this marked. It's also UI5 AMD-like module. And in the places you used it, like in the control, sorry, you see that, let's go to debug sources, it rewrites the dependencies to that and makes sure that it's consumed from your local third-party. With that, it's private exclusive for your application. And you always ensure that you have the version you use, and there is no conflict with others because you share the namespace potentially with someone else. So in case of using third party, I would always recommend to do exactly that way. So one more thing, consuming applications. So we have 3 more minutes. So this one I want to just finish because the transpiling is maybe something I would take them separately, but this one is also nice. So if you have a reuse component, then the reuse component is somehow aside, but you can't make use as a dependency in your application. So it's the same application I created, like the app in the beginning from the boilerplate. But now I want to make use of that. So what I would expect is that I can write UI5ers live.comp. So this is this reuse component, and I also consume that relative to me from me as a dependency. It should be in here. Yeah. Now in the application, I have also dependency to this component, and I would sorry, in this case I would say it's better a dev dependency because it's mainly only for testing. It's not a delivery asset. So let's move it to the dev dependencies. And what we now can use is the UI5 tooling, UI5 middleware UI5. The name is awesome. It's a lot of UI5 in there. Because this UI5 middleware UI5 now enables that you can consume, these components, these reuse components also in your application. So how does it look like? So the only thing what you need to do here in this case, go to that, take the configuration, and by default, it's also configuration free. You can add also mappings, path mappings to that, but you can read that in the documentation here. So let's add this as well here inside. And let me start the application. So having this, what now happens is that I can consume these applications also through the resource routing. So in the resources, I will find UI5ers live com. And here you see also here inside that this additional component is being in. So now I can make use of this component inside this application, and I could also use that for routing. So it's just hanging because it loads. That takes a little bit the first time. A lot of resources are being loaded. Hooray. And it's slow. So, but it should normally not be that slow. Good, here it is. And now what we want to do as a last thing, so give me this 1 minute. So I want to show you quickly how you can make use now of the inside the component of routing to get that in. And that's my last thing. So in the application here, let's go to the manifest, because I don't know how many people of you have seen that, how you can do this component-based routing. What I want to do now is here, I want to add these component usages inside the manifest. This describes, let's go and put that in front of the routing, what kind of components I want to reuse inside that. And then with a component usage, I can now register in the routing an additional component route. So therefore, I'm adding here route to my component, which is then in the target at a type component routing, yeah, at a component type target. And this points to this UI5ers live component. So with that, I'm now able to navigate potentially to this UI5ers live component, which is then based on this component usages in this name. And if I now use in the view, and I don't know how often or whether you have seen that already, with these templates, we have some functions available. And there is this nav2 function in the controller, in the base controller inside. So you can make use of that and then use the name of the routing to navigate then to this component. So let's put that a bit more up here. And now I can say hello, and you see, wow, we are navigating to this component. So now this is being integrated and it works just out of box. You can test and make use of the reuse components. And that's the last thing. Let me just add here in that one, now a back button that we can navigate back and forth. So I go here now in my UI5ers live comp. Also, I don't restart anything. I just go there now and in my view, and I add the back button. Let's use the illustrated message because it accepts button. So, and now I can navigate to it. I have to go back button and I can navigate back and forth. And that's really a very nice thing, that it feels like what you can do and do things really embedded here and benefit from all this toolings. The one thing I missed now is transpiling. But if you used TypeScript, then you have seen that, and with the transpiling, you can also make use easily of that to let's say on JavaScript, use modern ECMAScript classes. So the things what we have in TypeScript, and use then the transpiler to convert that back.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for this excellent roundup of many useful UI5 tooling extensions. The same thing in half the time at UI5Con. That must have been a hell of a ride. So
oh yeah,
it's good to have this bookmark later on when we publish it on YouTube, so you can look stuff up later on and repeat it and look at it. Also, thanks to everyone else, of course, for your interest. I have not seen any open questions so far. Just to remark that there's also a UI5 CC/MD custom control at UI5 community. If you want to show the markup, so you don't have to code it yourself, the UI5 community has you covered for markup display already. This was just an example here. Hope to see you all again in August for this session. Bye.